right. All right. It says we're live.
Hello. If anybody's actually here with us at the moment, make a comment. At the moment it shows 0, but that usually takes a while before the counter actually shows anybody populating. If you're watching this through the Facebook feed, be sure to click on that link that I provided to allow StreamYard permission, because otherwise when you post a comment, all we'll see it as is Facebook user, which doesn't mean we won't answer your question. We just won't know who you are.
Right.
So we'll wait a couple minutes till a few more people show up, and then we'll get started.
Yeah, and we are showing. I pulled up the Facebook feed, and our Facebook feed is showing.
Excellent.
Yes.
It's always nice when all of that works out.
First time I did a live feed,
oh, hello,
it
Aura.
was quite comical.
Is it Aura or Ara? Tell me if I got it right the first time or the second time. I'm going to assume it's probably and another. So whoever did the next Facebook user, hello. If you give StreamYard permission, we'll be able to see it. Although Cheri and I are going to try to also follow it on Facebook and make sure.
So if you see me looking down, I'm actually looking at my other feed. So I'm not ignoring you.
She's not ignoring you.
I'm not ignoring the people.
Stephanie.
I'm actually trying to see the people.
Hey, Stephanie. So yeah, this is the first time Cheri and I have done a live together. It's also the first time I've used StreamYard. I use it as a guest and as somebody who watches in many of my my laser groups. So I thought this would be a good way to do it, because we can actually send the feed both to the Facebook group, to our to my YouTube channel, and also to the shop's Facebook page.
Oh, sorry, that just covered up.
No, you're good. You're
there
good.
We go. There we go.
You're good.
Now I can.
Oh, well,
now,
we got
now
19.
I can look up and see.
Oh, good. Well, if you see any particular comments that that we need to make a post on, let me know. Hey, Gwyneth. Oh, Toronto. Is it chilly up there today? I don't know about anybody else, but it's chilly here in California, at least in the San Francisco Bay Area. Okay,
Kathy,
so we'll
get. Are you getting comments on our StreamYard?
I'm seeing them.
I am not.
So for you, up on the right-hand side of the screen, you should have comments, banners, brand, and private chat. Click on the comments. Well, if you don't, I'll take care of these, and you can take care of the Facebook ones.
Okay, because it's not showing for me for some reason.
Very strange.
It is. Well, just
the joys of technology. So anyway,
yes.
Well, we're glad
hello,
that
Holly and Gwyneth.
Oh, and Kathy. Hi, Kathy.
Yeah.
Lots of names I know. Hi, Renee. We'll wait a couple of minutes and then we'll get started with. So as you can tell from the screen, so I'll stick my hand out. You'll see where this is. So I've got the Sarah Rinder chart, and then what I've brought is most of the fabrics and all the threads and a stitched piece I've done from the chart, because we thought it would be nice to go over some of the materials. And then if anybody has questions, just be sure to ask, and we'll answer verbally. And then if we need to provide any links or anything, we can add those as well. So we'll go ahead and get started. Oh, hi, Terry. So today is in fact the shop's 25th anniversary, which is why Cheri and I decided to do this today. It doesn't seem like 25 years ago, but time flies when you're having fun. And this was such a perfect release for this big occasion. When Nicola and I talked about doing Sarah last year, we had originally planned on releasing it at the end of the summer, and life took several turns for both of us. So we decided to to push it out into this year. And when we were trying to decide on what date to release it, she said, well, why don't we announce it in like, maybe January, and then you could do it in the spring. And it wasn't until after we had that conversation that I remembered, oh yeah, the shop's 25th anniversary is this year.
Yep.
So
Your
I had
silver
forgotten last year
anniversary.
that it was this year. So our silver anniversary is today. And we're really excited I'm just excited to have gotten to 25 years. And I'm really excited about Sarah, because I think she's just such a lovely design. A part of why I liked it when Nicola showed me the picture to me was, I'm not really a big bird fan in a lot of samplers, only because they tend to be more stylized and they tend to be so out of proportion with everything else that they look a little weird. I
Yep.
like weirdness, but birds maybe not so much. And these guys just totally seem like they're having a bird bath. They're having a party in the bird bath. So, they're just having a really great time of it. So part of what I
Well, they
wanted to
are
show,
happy birds.
they seem,
They
well,
are
and
happy birds.
we think they might be mourning doves. They have the shape of a mourning dove and kind of
Right.
the coloration. So I think it's conceivable that might be what they are. Part of what I wanted to show today was what the chart looks like inside. So, Nicola always has a section about so this is Hannah Rinder, this is Sarah's mom, and Sarah's father, William. So she has a great section on the history of the sampler and a bit about Sarah's life, which I think is always really wonderful. And then this is actually what the chart looks like. So you get it in color. You'll recognize this motif that is actually my little stitched piece. So I decided that I should stitch a piece just to have the colors, to show what the colors look like when they're stitched on something. This is on 38.
They're stunning.
Yeah, and it's on 38 count filbert. I did it with SWA 103. And I just think they really pop. They really stand out. And from a distance, they actually pop out more than they do up close. So that's always one of the things also I tell people when they're stitching a piece is if you're laying threads out on it and you think, oh, those might not work, don't just look at it this close to you. Don't have it just be right in your face, but set it at a distance of what you're going to actually look at it, because you'll discover that it looks very, very different. When you hold it up close to the screen, you still get a good sense of the coloration on it, but you get a very different sense of it when it's farther away. You get more of seeing the curves in the roses. The highlights that look a little chunky when you're up close and personal with it look more realistic when you're not so up close and personal with it. So I always think that's a really fun thing to do. So the inside of the chart is done in color as well as the symbols, which is the way Nicola always does her things. And then the one-page PDF that you get when you buy the chart. So when we ship the charts, when I tell the order system that your order has been shipped, it will automatically email you a link to the PDF. And it's a one-page PDF of the entire chart. So what you get is this whole thing charted out as one page as a PDF. So if you're going to do it on your iPad or your Kindle or whatever other device you have that you like to stitch with, particularly if you're traveling, rather than having to have several pages broken up, you actually get to be able to see it as one big page, and then you can highlight to your heart's content and put things wherever you want them to be. So I will leave this here, and I'm going to put the chart off to the side for a moment. So what I wanted to show next was the threads. So didn't bring the DMCs because we haven't finished putting thread packs together for those. We're still missing some threads. We're missing a bunch of things, but we're still missing some colors specifically for the DMC. When I originally decided we were going to do this, I thought we would sell way more charts than we would have kits, and it's turned out to be exactly the opposite. So, which is a lovely thing. So Pat at Lakeside is dying her fingers out.
She is
And
probably in her sleep even.
I suspect that is probably the case. I'm sure she's got visions of Sarah haunting her in her dreams. And then Access, we actually have all of the silk. We have all the Soie d'Argent thread packs, but we're still waiting on, I think, like 200 more of the Soie 103.
Yeah.
Because the spool ones take longer to do. So we'll be getting those up through April, May, and June. So the earlier you're ordered, you'll get your stuff probably, you will get your stuff sooner. And we plan to start shipping hopefully by the middle of next month, but we just kind of need to finish getting a few things together. So this is the Soie d'Argent colors. And if you remember seeing my stitch samples, if you've looked at them in the group, so this is, let me find one of them. I brought them all from home with me. Actually, I've left most of them here. I had a couple of them still at home. So this is 40 count. This piece that's back here, this is 38, which is what, so this is 38 count, one strand of Soie 103. So it's actually really quite nice coverage. I'm currently working on the same bouquet on the 45 count with Soie Surfine. So when I get it done, I'll post it as well, just so you get a sense of the scale. I'm also working on, and haven't finished it yet, but I'm also working on this little bird here.
Oh, I love that little bird.
So he's this little guy over in this corner.
Yeah.
Let me put that down so you can see. So he's that little guy over in the corner there. I'm doing him over one on 38 count on with Soie Surfine. Actually, I'm doing him on 45 over one with Soie Surfine.
He's gonna be so
it's
tiny.
Just he's just, I mean, he's like this big. He's just super tiny. super tiny. So this
I love that.
Is the 40 count Newcastle. And so the way I did this is the bottom one is, let me actually put it on top of the chart so that it won't flop so much. So this, I'll put this up a little higher. You won't be able to see it particularly well, but the photos are in the Facebook group. So definitely go look at those because I did them as close up, so you should be able to see them quite well. So this is Soie Surfine, this is Soie 100, this is Soie d'Argent, and that is DMC floss. I was surprised at how nice the DMC looked on all the counts. I don't stitch as much with DMC anymore because I've kind of become a silk snob. And I thought, actually it was really nice. It filled really nicely, and it gave it a different kind of sheen than the silk does. It has a different sheen because of the way it's twisted. So you still get a sheen, it's just different than the silk sheen.
Right.
But if you're going to do like 40 count, I think the Soie 100 over 1 is the thing that gives you the most crisp look. So that's what this one is, where my thumb is. You get a much denser look with the Soie d'Argent and the DMC, but you get a nice crisp look with that. I think the Soie Surfine is too sparse. It works fine over one.
Yeah.
It works fine over one, but it's just way too sparse for anything else. So that's one of the reasons why I did all these stitch samples, was so that you could see what they look like on all the various counts with the different threads. And I just picked the same color of the thread in all of them, just so you had a really good sense for it. The only one I did not do a stitch sample of all of the colors or of all of the threads was the 56 count. And that's because at 56 count, neither Soie d'Argent nor DMC, it's just hard enough to even get it through the fabric. So even at this angle, you can tell it's pretty dense. So that again, it's Soie Surfine on the bottom and a Soie 100 on the top. I would use for this, for the 56 count, I would use Soie Surfine, just because you get coverage, but you get the crispness. If you use Soie 100, which you can use, it's very plump and kind of in your face. So it's a personal preference thing. Kind of just depends on what you guys, what each of you might like to do it in and what you want the ultimate look is. So
The other
any
thing to think about too is that bird bath and the birds are so heavily stitched that it can actually draw your fabric in just a little bit through there to use that 103. And
oh yeah,
it doesn't
yeah.
make it impossible to frame, but it does make your framers grumble a little bit.
Yeah, because
So
it sort of collapses it a bit, what happens is that because the thread is so tight, is that it pushes the threads
right,
apart from each other, and then it kind of makes the whole thing kind of bunched up. You can do it, but then you have to try to stretch the daylights out of it, and sometimes you can't get the fabric really to stretch out to stretch out as much as you might want for it to, have a really nice look to it. But
right.
I just really think the colors are lovely. So I'm going to actually take these guys off my little tray
Oh, the colors are
and
just gorgeous.
lay them on the fabric. So you get a really nice bright range of everything from the really pale yellow that's part of what's in the birds. So the gold that's used in the bouquet is actually this one. It's kind of that mustardy sort of gold. So that's actually what some of the leaves are. So in this, it was, in the SWA 100, it was these two colors. It's that one and this one. So that's the dark green. Let's see if I can get those so they don't roll. There we go. So this is this lighter gold color that's in the bouquet. Is actually that sort of mustardy gold. So it looks very different on the spool than it
Oh,
does
it
when it's
does.
stitched. Yeah, and the
Yeah.
spool, it just looks like it's on the spool. It almost looks kind of garish, and then when you stitch with it, I think in part just because of the fabric, it softens the colors a little bit.
Right.
These are the fabric is a very muted color, so it does tend to tone things down. So if you did it on a brighter color, if you did it, say, on an off-white and weren't worried about the yellows and the pale blue disappearing, all of the colors would really super pop more, but in a very different way than they do on this kind of fabric.
Right. They would a little brighter.
They would definitely come out
They would
looking a
not
bit
tone.
brighter.
That fabric helps tone them down just a little bit.
It does.
And so they're absolutely lovely. So yeah, you would get a very different look if you were to stitch that on an off-white or
Yeah.
something.
Well, yeah. So this is actually off-white. So if I lay them across here,
yeah,
you can kind of tell how much difference that makes.
yes,
So this color makes them stand out, but it does keep them a bit muted. This makes them stand out, but like I said, I think it almost makes them a little bit too bright.
yes.
Not that that's a bad thing. It just depends on what you would want. My concern with going to a really light fabric for this particular piece is these colors get used a lot in the birds. And because they're so light, putting them on a lighter fabric does tend to make them, means there is a possibility they would disappear a little bit more.
Yeah.
But you could certainly do it. I don't think I would do it on an antique white just because I think it's a little too stark a difference, which is what that is. But I think if you wanted to do it on, say, like, even this is cream. So if you did those yellows on the cream,
really would lose those
they won't
yellows
stand, but you're going to lose the yellows on the cream.
Yeah, you're going to lose those yellows on cream.
And that's always a challenge for, not so much for the reproduction people, because usually they're trying to match the ground fabric it was stitched on. I mean, they're trying to come close to it. In this case, the fabric that they picked, I haven't seen the original, so I don't know what it actually looked like. Hopefully at some point we'll actually be able to get a photograph of it. It's in Australia at the moment. And hopefully we'll be able to get a photograph and see what it looks like. But I'm assuming that the color was probably in that range. And this fabric in particular has a little bit of, it's going to show up in the screen a bit more gray. It's actually not really very gray. It's actually
No,
more,
it's not at all.
so this is the 52, 60, 53, 53, 63, whatever count you want to call it. This is the uneven one.
5360.
This one is
Yeah.
called Waffle Cone, and it really does kind of look like a waffle cone.
Right.
It really does. It really does definitely have those kind of tones to it. So like the 30 count, let me put this back over here. So this is the 30 count of this fabric. And it's a little bit darker, and that's called Swiss Coco. So this is 38, that's the 30. This is the 50 to 60, and this is the 45. So the colors are similar, but like all fabrics, even if you get them, I mean, they're all done in the same mill in Italy. They're always going to be slightly different. Dye lots exist for everything. It doesn't matter whether it's hand dyed or whether it's not.
Right.
So if you are just doing, if you're just getting them even from one place, they can be very different. I will tell you, for hand dyed fabrics, the other challenge for them is also, Pat at Lakeside, who's also a friend of mine, sent me a piece about 8 or 9 years ago where they had changed threads in the weaving machine as they're running, because they usually run about 400 yards. That's usually what encompasses what we call a mill run. And they have to change the threads off the enormous spools they work from while they're doing that. She sent me a piece where when she cut the fabric, the change occurred in that piece of fabric that she had cut. It was from the exact same dye bath, and it looked like two different colors because the thread change had happened in the middle of it, and it looked super, super different. So it can just be affected, color can be affected by so many things. So even if it's a mill dyed a mill fabric, as opposed to a hand dyed one, you can end up with color variations that are kind of all over the map. So I also wanted to show, I don't have every single Lakeside yet. Pat is still, as I said, dyeing her fingers to the bone. This is, but I'm going to lay it on this color so you can kind of see what the difference is. So this is, so these are all vintage maple sugar. This is the 36 count. This one came out a little dark and a little more pinky purple than the 32 came out. So the 28 and the 32 both came out a little more gray than this one did. And I'll tell you a secret.
I always think of maple sugar as having that pinky purple. So in my brain was thinking that one actually looks more like what my brain thinks of.
Yeah, if you look at it on its own, it actually still looks like it's got kind of the pinky purple. It's not as gray as what it looks like on the screen, but when you compare it to a different
dye lot
fabric. So the reason why these
gorgeous.
two look more similar than not is because these are all on Zweigart base, is the thread that they spin to weave the fabric from, they use the same thread for 32 and 28.
Gotcha.
So they've got enormous cones of the linen thread that they've prepped for the milling machines, for the weaving machines. And the difference between these two is the count, but the base threads that comprise that count are the same. So 28 and 32 will tend to dye from a hand dyed dyer more similar than not. They will still be different, but they tend to be more similar than not. Whereas you get to the 36, this is a different thread entirely for the stuff that they mill it from. And then 40 is different, 46 is different, and the 56 is different. And so each one of those
comes out lighter than everything else.
Usually the denser ones tend to come out a little bit lighter, and part of that is a function of how thin the thread is. So these will come out a little darker just because the fact there's more surface area, that there's actually more thread to absorb the dye.
Right.
So they will tend to be a little bit darker. If you ever get a hold of hand-dyed Italian linens, so for a while, for a few years, Pat used to dye the Graziano linens. She could put it in the same dye bath as this one, and the Graziano would always come out darker. And it didn't matter the count. It would always come out darker. And that was partly just because the way where they get their threads from that they use to mill the fabric from is spun differently and is made somewhat differently. They don't all come from one source. So you get them kind of all over the map. I mean, but for me personally, it's part of the attraction of fabrics, whether it's hand dyed or not. It's just that no two are ever going to be identical. I use the example of platinum from Zwagart, which in my 25 years as a shop owner has mutated at least 10 times. Sometimes it's silver, sometimes it's gray, sometimes it's greeny gray, sometimes it's more green than either gray, and then sometimes it goes back to one of the other ones. So if you look at, there was a piece that Taya Dewick did, Victoria Sampler, like 15, 20 years ago, her heirloom wedding sampler that was done on platinum. It looks very, very silver. And yet, if you go and buy the fabric, if you bought the fabric, say 10 years ago, the fabric didn't look like that at all. It was more green than the gray in it. So, just kind of the fun of all the intricacies of what goes on in the fabrics behind things. But hopefully that at least gives a bit of info.
One thing that I like is if you haven't ever stitched on a legacy linen, its hand is different than a Zweigart linen.
Yeah.
But it's lovely to stitch on. I get people that are in-hand stitchers that really like it because it has a little more body.
Yeah, and I actually,
some of the Zweigart linens.
You can kind of tell from my little sample piece here. I don't stitch in a hoop. Actually, here's my bird. There's my tiny bird.
Oh, he's so tiny.
I'm doing him over one on 38 then. I kept thinking I was doing it on 45, but he's on 30. And that's with Soie Surfine. So for over one on 38, 40 count, I love doing Soie Surfine.
Yes.
I'm going to take my necklace off because I wanted to show you something in it. So this is, I should probably clean the glass. Let's see, get it at the right angle so that you can actually see
turn it. If you'll turn it.
I'll turn, here we go. Let me turn it this way.
There you go.
There we go. Let me turn it this way. So this is 40 count over one with basically hand dyed Soie Surfine. So about 15 years ago, Deb at Stitchville, Roz at Acorns and Threads, and then Janine and Jean at the Attic, we went together and we did a thing called the Society of Soie Surfine, and Anne at Gloriana hand dyed some for us. She accidentally got sent a spool of Soie Surfine instead of Soie 100. And she was going to send it back to them. And I said, no, would you try dyeing it? So she did. It's a lovely thread, but to do it for production, trying to skein it is quite frankly just so awful that's why she went in search of Tudor silk. So you could do the same thing with Tudor silk and do it over one. So this is a small sampler, a small component out of a sampler that one of Janine's customers owns. Janine at Acorns and Threads is a good friend. And her customer had given it to their guild. And so I used it as just a thing to do my little necklace with. And just for kicks, I made this entire necklace. I made the chain too.
Oh,
so I do chain. I do chain mail in my private life. I do a lot of things in my private life, and I also did all the soldering work on it as well. So this was entirely made by me. I did not make the glass.
Question.
Yeah,
we have a Facebook question, and Marianne Brand says, "Is the 36 count too light for the Dalgé?" And the answer to that is no, not at all. I don't think so.
No, not at all. If you mean in terms of thickness, actually 36 is really great for Soie Dalgé. Let me find my stitch sample here. It plumps up nicely, so it fills in really well. And it's not like with the 40 count, the soie d'Alger tends to get a little bit plumpy. But with the 36, so this is the 36. So Marianne, so that's the stitch samples on the 36. So this is the second one from the top is the soie d'Alger. So you can tell from the distance that you get really, really great coverage on 36. You can even do it up to 40. It gets a little plumper at 40, but 36 is really an ideal for it. So 36 is kind of the transition between soie d'Alger and soie 100. If you want a little sparser coverage, you can do it with soie 100, but if you still want it to be a density, a nice dense, then you can certainly do it with the soie d'Alger or the soie 100. And then see, Debbie wanted to know, so my little flower, so this was stitched on the 38 count filbert. So
Yeah,
that's one of the legacy. That's, go ahead.
There we go. I was going to say we had a couple more questions. You found them. Good.
Yeah. So
No,
so that was stitched with soie 100.
I was going to bring up. Perfect.
Yeah. They're popping up on mine. I don't know why you weren't able to see them. And then so Debbie also wanted to know about what size to order. It depends on the count. So when you go to the order page underneath the chart, it will have what is called related items. So there'll be across the top row, the 4 thread options, and then across the bottom, the fabric options. So if you're going to, and in each of those, it will tell you what the cut is for Sarah Rinder. So almost all the cuts are custom. So 30, 28, 32, 36, 40, the 30, the 38. I think there's only 2 of the counts that are not custom cuts. So it'll actually it'll say, say 24 by 27, and it'll say custom for Sarah Rinder. So you don't need to try to figure that out. I already figured all that out for you.
Yeah. Yep. We did all that work for you so that you don't have to worry about that. Tell us what
and then Debbie
you want,
also
and
wanted,
you're good.
And Debbie also wanted to know about what fabrics to use with soie 103. It really depends on the coverage that you like. I say 36 to 45, 46.
Yeah.
I know some people really like stitching it with 55. For me, at 55, it seems a little bit too chunky. But my ideal is like 38 to 40. But go take a look in the Facebook group for Sarah Rinder, or I also posted the samples in our sampler years group as well, about what the counts look like, what the threads look like on each of them. So this is the 45. So the second one from the bottom, once the screen decides that it will actually, sometimes if I get it a little bit farther away, it will pay attention. It's always, there we go. So the second one from the bottom, Deborah, is the soie 100. So at 45 count, the soie 100 is a little plump. I like the soie surfine better, but you might decide that you really like the soie 100. So either one of those will work. And it's just kind of a function of, no 2 people, you could get the same threads to 5 people and have them stitch on different counts. And you would get 5 different answers back about what they like. One of the reasons my favorite thread to stitch with is 103 is I like the way it slides through the fabric. So the spun, the twisted threads like DMC and soie d'Alger are not as physically smooth if you look at them under a microscope. If you look at soie 103 and soie surfine both under a microscope, you'll see how tightly twisted they are. Both of them people use in machine embroidery because they're super strong and because they're so tightly spun that when they're so tightly twisted together that they don't move when you run them at high speed through a sewing machine. So that's also a good way of trying to determine whether or not a thread might hold up to usage like that, to whatever usage you might have. But I just like the way it slides. It literally slides through. It's kind of like, somebody put some sort of slickening agent on it, and it just is really super, super smooth. The other thread that you can use, you won't find it everywhere. We carried all of them for a while, and I have out of most of them and need to reorder, is Gloriana hand dyes SWA 100 and sells it under the name Luminescence.
Yes.
So Anne originally dyed the SWA 100 for me. So Anne at Gloriana used to work for me years ago. She was with me, not at the beginning, at the very beginning. She came in I think like year 2 or 3. So she was around a long time ago. And I asked her to dye some SWA 100 when I got a hold of a spool of it. I got a spool of white and went, oh, I love this stuff. So she dyed it. And then I actually got to name, rather than having a color named for me, I got to name the thread. And I just liked the luminosity of it. So that's why I named it Luminescence. So if you want to do little bits of something in a hand dyed, then Luminescence, and you like SWA 100, Luminescence would be a good thread to do that with as well. So this is the SWA d'Alger, this is the SWA Surfine, and this is the SWA 100. And I kind of tried to get these guys in kind of the same order. Between these two, the colors are not exactly the same. They're kind of close. So for those of you who don't know that much about SWA Surfine, it is used by the Hermès scarf people in France. It's what they use to do their hand-rolled hems for their silk scarves. So a lot of the colors that exist for the fashion industry, because they're driven by the colors. Yeah, you can kind of tell that sometimes. It's like you kind of go, oh, I have no idea what I would do with that one. But Lamora has at Access has worked with them to expand the line over the last 10 12 years to have more colors that we would use, not just in samplers but in other things as well. So it's not all entirely fashion oriented, and sometimes a color exists in SWA 100 that doesn't exist in SWA Surfine.
Right.
And that was the case for this. There were 2 of the colors that didn't exist, well, that weren't readily available. And Lamora worked with, because we've been working on this for a year. And Lamora worked with Avera SWA to get a couple of the colors dyed in the SWA Surfine so that we could offer those as an option as well, and not have the color be, really drastically different. Sometimes they're farther removed. Sometimes they're pretty close together. Sometimes they're, pretty spot on, like these 2 pinks that I was doing all my samples with. Those are the same color numbers in the threads. The other thing you look at for color numbers is SWA Surfine numbers are 4 digits. So SWA 103, this color is 523. In SWA Surfine, it's 2523. So they added 2 to the beginning of it.
Yep.
So that they know which thread line it's out of. Otherwise, it gets way too confusing for them. It's confusing enough for us. But I was going to show you what these look like on the fabric as well, because I think, being able to see the spools laid out is really nice. And again, you get that vibrancy from, so these you're going to get the vibrancy from the fact that it's a super twisted thread. So this is all about light refraction. So if you're doing a piece where you really want it to be shiny, and you don't necessarily, but you don't want it to be, metallic kind of shiny, using one of the buttonhole type twist threads, there are some others on the market. Kanagawa Silk actually has a different weight thread of theirs that's similar in terms of how tightly spun it is. Because of the way it's twisted, you get a lot more light refraction out of it. So you get a lot more light bounce, which makes it look sharper, and it also gives it a much more luminous quality to it. So if you compare these colors to for example, to the SWA d'Alger ones, even though they're the same colors, as now I start throwing things on my table here, even though these are the same colors, they look very different. So this one is that color. And even though they're not going to be exact, because the Soie d'Alger colors are like a whole other family than the Soie Surfine and the
Right.
Soie 100. But you get the idea of, you can see how much light bounce you get off of this than you get off of this. The other two threads in the Avera Soie line that have that super light quality to them is Soie Gobelins and Soie de Paris. Those are both filament silks that are twisted. And because filament silks are on their own tend to be a lot more luminous, for lack of a better word, then
Right.
you get a whole different light bounce for those as well. So anytime you're trying to decide, like, do I want my colors to be muted, but I don't want to change the colors, sometimes just changing the thread texture can change what it looks like. So like if you were doing this piece in Soie d'Alger and there was some part of a component, like one of the birds or something, that you wanted to stand out more, if you stitched it in the Soie 100, you would get a different light bounce off of the stitched piece and it would look slightly different. It's not going to be so noticeable that you would go, I wonder what in the world they did with that. But it would definitely be noticeable enough that you'd go, wow, that bird or, you know, whatever, that motif seems to stand out a little bit more. So that's kind of the fun of playing with the threads, is that you can get all sorts of interesting looks depending on what kind of thread you're stitching with, as well as just the thickness of it. I'm going to put these guys back and then I will put the Soie Surfine on. So I would use the Soie Surfine on the 46 to 50 to the 5260
Yeah.
because it is so the tag underneath Soie Surfine actually says, actually I don't even know that it's on these. Yeah, it's not actually on here. This is a 130/2. So the
Yes.
number in front, so Soie 100 is 100/3. 100 is the denier. It's a measurement of how thick the thread is. So like if you go buy a machine thread for machine embroidery, you'll find things that are say like 30, 40, 50, 80 denier. That's how thick the thread is. So Soie 103 is a 100 denier thread made of 3 threads that are twisted together to make up that whole spin. So if you look at that in comparison to the Soie Surfine is a 130/2. So it's twisted from 2 strands. These are not divisible. You don't take them apart like you would Soie d'Alger. And it's 130 denier, so it's actually 30% lighter, thinner in weight than the 103 is. Which is why if you were doing, I've used it to do shaded black work with. I've used Soie Gobelins, Soie de Paris, Soie Perlée, not usually, only because Soie Perlée is usually too thick for what I'm doing. And the Soie 100 and the Soie Surfine. And even if you do them all in black, you'll get a different look just from the weight of the thread and also from the spinniness of it. So this is the Soie Surfine. So it again is going to be a tiny bit lighter, more luminous in color than the Soie 100 is. So these are the two. And if you look at these, there's a little bit of variation. The Soie Surfine is just ever so slightly more luminous. And again, that's a function of it being twisted. You've got more surface area. So the more surface area, the more light bounce you get, the more it tends to be sort of, you know, in your face and sparkly linen. Let's see. So Desiree has a question. The sampler has an awful lot of yellows. I don't mute some of that. Well, surprisingly, it's not going to be as loud as you think it is. So my stitch sample here was done with that color, this color, and let's see, I think it's this one with these 3 for those yellowy bits. So it doesn't actually look near as yellow when you stitch it as what they look like on the spool.
It mutes
So
them.
and if you change the colors to something, I mean, you could maybe make it go a little more on the creamy side, but since it's for primarily in the birds, I think that might lend itself to making the birds look a little weird, but I don't know. It's certainly something that you could play with. Finding the shades is always the challenge. So getting this many shades in a sort of goldy yellow, that's always going to be a bit of a challenge. So, and then let's see. Oh, so what fabric's on the table? So this is the 38 count filbert. That's the legacy linen. So it's what I stitched my little bird on here. I'll lay her back down there in a moment as I stack my spools up. So this is 38 count, and it's the color name is filbert. So Lakeside, a lot of the linen companies, even a lot of the hand dyers, they'll keep the color name across all the counts. Access Commodities, when they bring their legacy linens in, they actually give them names unique to the count. So this is filbert. This is Waffle Cone. Oh, sorry, no, this is Nightingale. This is Waffle Cone.
Excuse me.
And this is Swiss Coco, and then that's filbert. So they're all basically the same color, but they'll turn out different colors just because of the counts. But they're all in that sort of cocoa range. That's always kind of the fun, is that sometimes talking to the fabric vendors, it's like, well, what are you going to call that color? Like, I'm not really sure. Yeah, I happen to like, as Deborah said, I like keeping them across the counts, because for me as a shop owner, it's a lot easier when somebody calls and says, I'm looking for vintage maple sugar. What count do you have it in? And so what we've tried to do, particularly in the online catalog, is list what the other color names are for that same fabric. So if you're looking for Nightingale, but you know it comes in a different count, but you don't know what name it is, that you could look for Nightingale, and it would pop up and say filbert is dyed the same, or is milled the same as the Nightingale is. And then I also wanted to show you the other little accoutrements. So for those of you who are ordering stuff. Yeah, the fun stuff. So for those of you who are ordering the full kit, so the threads, the fabric, and the sampler, Susan Hyde at Miss Minnie McBean has done 2 scissor fobs for us. We ended up having to do 2 because we couldn't get enough in one design. And as it is, she's the last of my 800 it actually got shipped today. So yay! Between the 2 colors, we have 400 of each. When we get to the point where we've satisfied all of the pre-orders, so if you order before the 1st of April, which is Saturday, if you order by Saturday and you order the chart, the fabric, and and one of the thread packs, it's mix and match, so you pick what you want, then you'll get one of these for free, and we'll decide which one you get, in part based on what we actually have. We may do a 3rd one later if we find that a lot of people want to collect them. We picked another motif if we decided to do a 3rd one, so that's a possibility. This one is the bouquet. So this is actually,
see if you can hold them closer to the camera so they can
see
the...
So this one is actually the bouquet. Yeah, the problem is that there you go. You could kind of see the glass tends to reflect the light quite a bit. And then this one is the bird bath motif, and then the little fobby bits are actually birds in a bird bath. And this was the one that we could not get enough of to be able to do. If we'd been able to do 800 of one of them, it would have been nice, but there was no way that was going to happen. So sometimes you just you roll with it. And then I'm doing in the laser part of my life, I did so this is a thread keep, and there are 22 holes for the 22 colors. And I did that because I just thought I wanted to keep it in the bird theme. A needle minder, and then this is the scissor fob. So you could either attach it straight to scissors, or you could even attach it to the other fob. So we got those little guys as well. And then if you actually like to write on your acrylic, This is a wet erase marker. So if you're familiar with dry erase markers that you normally get at a fabric store, or sorry, not fabric store, that you normally get at an office supply place, this is a wet one. So if I write my name on here, which you probably are going to have trouble seeing just because the stuff is opaque. Yeah, you're not going to be able to see it very well. If I run my finger across it, a dry erase marker would come off. You could do it, but a dry erase marker, it won't come off. If I stick my finger in my water glass and then take it across with my finger, it's gone now. So I found these, and they're super fine tipped because I like writing on my stuff. And that way it's just really easy to get off. You can just, take a damp paper towel or a Kleenex or something and just wipe it off and have it be fun. Oh,
now,
and
where
so
did you find those at?
Oh, I actually sell them
Yeah.
at the shop now.
Oh, awesome.
I bought a boatload of them. I bought a boatload of them because I'd been trying to find them. I could find the onesies were pretty expensive, and then I ended up finding somebody who actually had them in dozens. So I bought like 4 dozen of them.
Oh, good.
So we sell them for, I think they're $3.75. So you can order them along with the acrylic if that's kind of something that floats your boat. So Ara said, wanted to know if you came both at the fobs. When we've reached our April 1st cutoff for the pre-orders, we'll see what we have left of the fobs. And then if we've got enough left to be able to offer them to everyone that might want a second one, I'll post a note in the Facebook group. So, and we may be able to get more of the bouquet ones. I know we can't get any more of the bird bath ones because the hardware that she attached to it is gone. We might be able to use the image, but it would be different hardware. But when the time comes, we'll get that. And then Debbie said, "I like the Queen of Everything box." Yeah. So this is these are 6x12 acacia trays that I actually laser engrave. So that I actually engraved this with my lasers. On a future live, I will take you for a tour of my laser space, which is next door to the shop. And so you can actually, these are actually listed in the online catalog as well. I like this size because I can put a lot of stuff on it. I've even been known to put my cups on them next to the couch because then I'm less likely to have them go wandering. So
yes,
it's kind of fun. Okay, and then Varsha wanted to know. Oh, hi Varsha. Desiree wanted to know if the acrylics are included or extra. They're extra. So if you already ordered your kit or your chart and you want to order the acrylics, just send me an email and I can add them to the order, and then they'll get shipped when the kit ships. I had not designed them at the time that we announced this and decided to release it, and I didn't get those done until about 2.5, 3 weeks ago. So, but yeah, so those are a separate purchase. But yeah, you can certainly order those if you want to do that. And then Deborah wanted to know how you use the thread holder. So I use it with a slip knot. So I take my threads. So this is some of the DMC. So this is, when I use DMC, I pull from the skein once and then twice, and then that's what I cut. Because I find if I go too much longer than that, I end up with knots, and too much shorter is just really annoying. Mm-hmm. So I will take that long length, which is that long, and then fold it in half. And then I fold it in half again, and that's what I shove up through the hole. So I put it through the hole. Let's see if I can do this in place. So I just kind of stick it there in the hole and then grab it with my thumbnail and pull it through. And then I'm going to do a slip knot. So I'm grabbing the thread from the back and just slip knot it like that. So if you're working with, you've got leftover bits, and maybe you don't keep stuff in a floss away bag or something like that, then you can actually just put them on here. No, I actually so Deborah said just one thread. No, actually, I actually I wouldn't put an entire skein on here because I'm not going to cut that many ahead of time. I might cut 6 or 8 lengths of a thread and then put them on here and then just pull them off as I need them. If you wanted to prep them so that all you had to do was pull off a single strand. You could certainly just sort of gang them. You do a single strand into, do 3 or 4 of them into that same hole, and then just pull it off when you're ready for it.
Well, you can do the same thing then with your spools. If you wanted
Yeah,
to prep your thread lengths for your spools
this is
too.
this is the extras of some of my SWA 100 colors. So that's actually links off of my spool that I hadn't stitched with. And so I just put it on there. So because sometimes I'll rewrap it on the spool, but I just kind of figured that it was just as easy to put it on there. So that worked there. Let's see. And Kathy wanted to know, yeah, if you need anything extra, like if you want one of the wet erasable pens or you want any of the other stuff, just send me an email, because at this point, because everybody who ordered the full thread, the thread, the fabric, and the chart, got one of are going to get out one of the free fripperies. I actually had to edit all those orders and add them manually, because in my online catalog, I could not figure out how to tell it. It has to have all 3 of those items, but two of those items, there's like 6 choices. So it just made it way too complicated. It
confused the poor computer.
It would have confused the poor computer. So either myself or Marissa, one of us, has touched every single online order that has come in. And for the people who are ordering just a chart and are overseas, Nicola is shipping those for us, because her postal rates to ship, particularly to the Commonwealth countries, is way less than it is from us for the States. And so I couldn't figure out how to make that work in the catalog either without it being really too confusing for people. So same thing, I go in and edit those and fix what the price is, and then send everybody a new copy of their order so they know. And we don't charge for stuff till we ship them. So until we're at the point where we're ready to ship, if you need to change something, you certainly can do that. So I've had some people who changed their fabric choices or their thread choices after they saw the stitch samples, because they looked and went, oh, I kind of like the look of that better. So if you do need to make a change, just send us an email and we can certainly do that. And Ruthie said, oh, thank you, Ruthie. Really nice. Yeah, I have fun creating laser stuff. That's kind of become I do still stitch. It's not like I don't stitch, but my brain thinks more of creative things that I can cut in the laser than necessarily. I've never been a cross stitch designer. I've never been a needlework designer. I'm good at execution, but I'm not great at the other part. So this part's fun for me, because I get to. Lasering is kind of the marriage of the 2 halves of my brain, the geeky side from me being a software engineer for a good chunk of my adult life, and the creative side of me for doing other kinds of fun stuff. So just kind of fun things. So anyway, hopefully that answers people's questions, shows off some of the bits and pieces. We'll probably do 2 or 3 others before we actually get to the point of starting to stitch, where we might show off actually doing some stitches with the various weights of the threads, and maybe talking a bit more about thread construction. So if you've got any particular things that you might want to have covered in a future live with Cheri and I, we just let us know. We'd be happy to do that. So, and we're streaming this, like I said, to our Facebook page, to my shop Facebook page, to the Sarah Rinder Facebook group, and also to our YouTube channel. And we'll do that for future ones as well. So if nobody else has any questions, we will be just at an hour, which I think will be a good time to say goodbye to everybody. I know some people are going to go off and do Mondays with Mary in our sampler years group. So anyway, thanks guys. We really appreciate it. It's so nice to see you. And if you have any questions, just post them in the Facebook group, and either Cheri or I will get around to answering them. So thanks very much. Bye.